I don't know if you want to go into the war now, but it's not good, man. We got a lot of problems with this conflict in Iran. A lot of problems.
Well, you don't think that there could be the civil unrest that they could take over, or you think that you think there's too much of a stranglehold on the government?
So I can go into
Does that make
detail
sense?
on all of this. Yeah, sure. So okay, so for me to kind of address that, because you're asking about like the uprising, like
Right.
is that possible? No, and I'll explain why.
Okay.
So the reason why it's not is because in America and in the West in general, we have a very skewed perception of what Iranians are like. You look at someone like maybe like a Patrick Bet-David or these, the Shah or these other like really influential Iranians that are very westernized that live in America. I need people to understand that like these Iranians are like not a good sample size of like the Iranians that actually live in Iran. Like these guys a lot of the times come from the pre-Islamic Revolution era, right? When it was more westernized, the Shah was in power, they were under the monarchy, they were pro-West, the oil wasn't nationalized, it was, being privatized by US companies, et cetera, working with Israel. And these Iranians typically were exiled or fled or whatever after the Islamic Republic came into power in 1979. And the Iranians that are there now, right, have a deep dislike of not just the United States, but also of Israel, right? They're not Zionists at all, and they definitely don't like the United States either. And they really don't like Israel because Israel has been their main enemy that's been trying to destroy them ever since 1979. So these Western Iranians don't have a proper pulse on the current political climate in Iran. Now, with that said, let me be clear about this. There's a lot of Iranians that don't like the Ayatollah. There's a lot of Iranians that hate the government structure, that don't like the IRGC, don't like Qasem Soleimani or any of these guys.
Yeah, you see them in the streets. You see the videos.
Even in Iran, like some of them were even celebrating when he was killed.
Right.
But who do they like less than the Ayatollah? Israel and the United States, because they look at it like, okay, we don't like this guy, but we'll be damned if you guys are going to bomb us and have us do your dirty work for you and fall to, Western imperialism. That's how they look at it. They look at it like they're the only country fighting against Western American/Israeli imperialism in the Middle East. Because to understand, and also they're Shia Muslims, right? So to them, dying for their country is a big deal. Like it's an honor, right? Like they don't like this is what we want to do, and it's like the holy month of Ramadan. So like dying as a martyr while defending your country in their eyes is like an honor. It's huge because they have a completely different worldview than we have here, right? Like we live in a very secularized, free nation where, everyone's able to do whatever they want, whatever. Iran's not like that. They're looking at it like we are fighting, they call America the big Satan and Israel the little Satan. They're looking at it like we are the ones standing up for Islam against the West and their imperial expansion. And they look at Israel as like the satellite of that expansion in the Middle East, because Israel wants to be the hegemon in the region, and Iran is the last country standing in their way. And this has been going on for many years. Now, this all started with October 7th. As you know, Hamas invaded and attacked Israel, and Hamas is a proxy for the Iranians. The Iranians have been backing them, the Houthis in Yemen, Hezbollah to the north in Lebanon, as well as the Bashar al-Assad regime. Now, the Israelis, especially Benjamin Netanyahu, have wanted to go to war with the Iranians for a very long time and get them out of there and have a regime change, because that is the last it is the last country that's still standing against them. And ever since October 7th, the Israelis have been able to systematically disrupt, dismantle, and or destroy all of their enemies. They went into Gaza, bombed it into oblivion. Hamas is pretty much weakened. They went into Lebanon, started they invaded, on foot, ground troops, as well as they bombed, and they did the pager event. Then they hurt Hezbollah by, killing Hassan Nasrallah, taking out the leadership, doing the pager attacks so they couldn't even communicate with each other, while also simultaneously running a ground assault. That led to a ceasefire. After that ceasefire happened, they dominated that into the disruption and destruction of the Bashar al-Assad regime. And Bashar al-Assad who was the former president, he ended up fleeing to Russia, and then a guy named Ahmed al-Shara came into power. Ahmed al-Shara was backed by the United States and Israel. Syria now is, getting their sanctions lifted, right? That was a guy that used to be a part of al-Qaeda, Ahmed al-Shara, aka al-Jalani. So when Syria was destabilized, that opened the door for Iran. So why am I mentioning all these countries? All of these countries were backed by the Iranians in what's called the Axis of Resistance. And the Houthis were getting bombed by us as well, right? They're still somewhat intact, aka Ansar Allah. So the Israelis, since they've been able to disrupt and hurt all these different proxies and stop them, the only country left is Iran, and Iran has been at the weakest it's ever been for the past year or so. So they tried to do decapitation back during the 12-day war in June last year. They did a sneak attack as the United States was doing negotiations with Iran. They failed to do the decapitation. They bombed them. They attacked them. They destroyed all their infrastructure. They destroyed a lot of their military infrastructure. They bombed their nuclear facilities. And then the United States came in and then dropped the really big bunker buster bombs from the B-2 bombers, et cetera. And Trump comes in, does the victory thing. We destroyed their nuclear capabilities. They're pushed back several months, if not years. And, mission accomplished. Midnight Hammer was great. Boom. And then ceasefire done. And then obviously now we're restarting the war as of a couple of weeks ago. But so that was always the plan. And they're using the nuclear angle as to why they're bombing, which is BS. But they needed something to sell to the American public to justify the invasion. But I threw a lot out there, so I don't know if you had a...
Yeah, I mean, what I'm wondering is that based on the videos...
Oh, the ground groups. You asked me about the uprising, right? That was
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is it doesn't seem it seems like I understand the government who's in power, but are you saying that the civilians feel the same way, that they're mostly Muslim and that they also believe the great Satan?
So bullshit? So we established kind of the atmosphere, right, of what led to that. So the people, right, and keep in mind, Iran's been heavily sanctioned for several decades now at this point by the United States, because of, standing up for Palestine and, resisting and all this other stuff. So the people look at it like, yes, our government pisses us off. We might have issues, but we're not going to rise up and fight against our government as invaders are coming in and bombing us and attacking us. So it actually had the reverse effect. And that's the 12-day war going back to, that's why I brought up the 12-day war. So they already tried this in June, right? So the Israelis bombed them. They took out several nuclear scientists, killed a bunch of generals. They did a sneak attack inside. It was very well done. The Mossad is fantastic.
They're very...
The Mossad is great. I can't even, as much as I'm critical of Israel, one thing I always give them credit for is they have one of the best intelligence services in the world between Unit 8200, Mossad, Shin Bet, their FBI equivalent.
Well, and they're able to take that intelligence and actually turn it into the pager thing, right?
Incredible.
Right. They're able
10-year operation, dude. 10 years they had bombs and walkie-talkies and pagers.
Even with the, they took out 80 of their clerics or whoever. It was basically like their Congress recently, where they were all getting together to determine who was next great leader was going to be, and they bombed the whole. They found out they were all in the same
you're talking
place.
about in this last conflict?
Yeah.
They killed Ayatollah and 50 of his top 50. They killed Ayatollah and his top 50 guys, essentially. Yeah.
And that was all done by hacking into the cameras and realizing they're all going to be at this one location. This is what's happening. Bomb it. That's wow.
Yeah. They're
and that's years of them hacking and watching.
And the Mossad is cutthroat like that because they have to be. They're in a very hostile region. Nobody wants them there. Everyone feels like they stole the land from the Palestinians. The Muslim world doesn't want them there. So they've always been on attack. And their quote literally is, "By deception we create war." That's one of their old quotes. And then now it's rise up and kill them first. So that's always been, the way they go. They have the most confirmed assassinations. They've killed nuclear scientists in Iran many times. So this is what they do. But going back to what I was saying, so they tried this already. So the reason why the people aren't going to rise, to answer that, because there's a two-part to this question. So the reason why the people aren't going to rise is because they already tried this back in June during the 12-day war. So as they did this attack and they, completely disoriented Iran, they destroyed their radars, they destroyed their air defense, etc. They did the strikes, they killed all the generals, the nuclear scientists, etc. The Shah gets on the internet and says, "Okay, guys, rise up and take over," right? Benjamin Netanyahu, rise up and take over, blah, blah, blah. Did it work? It actually, the opposite happened. The people took to the streets and they said, hit Israel back, hit Israel back. They protested telling the government to hit them back. Because for a very long time, the Iranians have always been very restrained in their retaliations to Israel. They blew up an embassy in Damascus. They've been attacking them, killing scientists, whatever. And Iran's always been extremely reserved in their retaliation because they don't want to draw the United States in, because they know if they hit them too hard, the U.S. can hit them, and they don't want a war with the U.S. So after it was called Operation Rising Lion, it was with the sneak attack. That's what led to the 12-day war. And when Iran retaliated, they retaliated very badly. And they absolutely, destroyed many strategic locations all across Israel. And the reason why you might not know about it is because Israel had a very strict censorship policy at the time for national security purposes, because if the Iranians were able to see on the news the places that were destroyed, they'd be able to fine-tune their missiles to hit it again, or they would know where the interceptors are. So obviously that's a huge, national security risk for them. But they hit them very hard. It was actually the Israelis that went to the United States begging for the ceasefire of the 12-day war because they're running out of interceptor missiles. Interceptor missiles are significantly more expensive than the missiles that the Iranians were using in the drones. So they were saturated in the air, and then as the days passed by, more and more missiles started getting in. Even though the Iranians were shooting less, more were starting to strike. And obviously the Israelis can't tolerate that forever. So they ended up ending the war. And this actually is what led to this next conflict, because they shifted from the nuclear problem, right, to, these guys actually have really dangerous ballistic missiles, because this is the first time that they saw all those capabilities. They saw hypersonic missiles hitting them. Israel's never been hit like that. So ever since the 12-day war, I knew that they were going to fight again, because those ballistic missiles caused a lot of damage to the Israelis. So they tried the decapitation strikes the first time. They told the people, rise up, your government's disoriented. The opposite happened. They took to the streets, said, fuck Israel. They rallied around the flag, and Iran hit them back very hard. So this time, they tried it twice. They tried it in January. They had the protests and everything else like that, which were Mossad operations. I think at this point now, it's pretty much widely known, unless if you want me to go into more detail. But a lot of the protesters, the Secretary of the Treasury, Besant, he goes ahead. I might have pronounced the name wrong, but he goes ahead and he messes with their currency. They crash the currency. This makes shopkeepers say, "What the hell? Inflation, going nuts." They protest. As these legitimate protests were going on, agitators, Mossad agitators, or CIA or some other foreign intelligence service agitators got involved in these protests and started shooting and killing police officers, right, and military officials. And this led to, widespread pandemonium. They were lighting mosques on fire, etc. And if you look at Israeli media, they admitted that there were intelligence assets on the ground agitating these protests. Mike Pompeo, the former Secretary of State, was on Twitter, said Mossad walks amongst you. So they put it out there in the public, right? That's what was going on with these protests. And then they said, oh yeah, they killed 30,000 people. There's no way that it's not 30,000, right? The Iranian government said 3,176, if I'm not mistaken. The U.S. government said around 30,000 or whatever. It's probably somewhere in the middle. Obviously a lot of people did die, but a lot of those people were operatives that were getting paid. I don't believe any government, they're always going to lie, right? Either overestimate or underestimate. And after that happened, the Iranians were able to stop those protests, and they stopped it twice, because what happened was when the protesters got arrested the first time, some didn't get arrested, and they ended up trying to smuggle a bunch of Starlink satellites in, right? So they can get on the internet, because the Iranians shut the internet off, because they knew, they're like, okay, this is a coordinated attack. Let's shut the internet off. They shut the internet off, and the protests dissipated, significantly reduced. So they smuggled in a bunch of Starlink. This came from the White House. The government admitted already that they were involved in trying to smuggle these Starlinks into the into Iran. So they got the Starlinks in. A couple of the operatives got the things to try to communicate, and then that's when the Chinese came in and they shut down the Starlink. And the Chinese intelligence services had to help them with jamming the Starlinks, and then they shut it down. And then that's when the protests pretty much died off. They captured a bunch of them. Hundreds of them got arrested. And I think they got a date to be hanged or whatever. And then that's when Trump said, if you hang any of them, we're going to start a war or whatever. And that's when I knew, okay, the U.S. is looking for an angle to come in and invade and start a war. That's why I was saying if you do anything to these protesters, we're going to come in. Trump doesn't care about the Iranians. Dude, you've had crippling sanctions on them forever. They're part of the JCPOA. You could have had an eye on their nuclear program. You pulled out of that because of the Zionist lobby. So that's when I knew they're not going to rise up. They tried with the protests. It failed. They tried with the 12-day war, it failed, and then now they tried it again. They thought, okay, let's bomb this base, kill the Ayatollah and the top 50 guys, then let's go ahead and say, okay, guys, rise up. They thought the war was going to last 4 days. By Monday, they're striking a deal. It's going to be good. Didn't work. People didn't rise up. If anything, they said, now we're going to fight back. We're going to go hard. We're in war. So it made the people once again rally around the flag. They don't have to like the regime, but they look at it we're not going to, be attacked by the United States and Israel. And turn on our government, we're still Iranian, right? And that's how they looked at it. And if you look at because I watch all media, I watch Israeli media, I watch American media, and I watch Iranian media and Middle Eastern media. A majority of the people are pro-government right now when it comes to this war. Of course, you got people that are fuck Khomeini, whatever. But even those people say fuck Israel more. So in the United States, so they're not going to do an uprising. So since that didn't work, now the war is going longer. So Trump said, okay, it's going to be 4 weeks. Now then it went to 8 weeks. Then it went to 100 days. Now we're looking at September. So now we're looking at 7 months. So what was supposed to be a 4-day operation is going to probably run into September.
Does Israel have the manpower to go into Iran?
No.
No.
Neither do we. Neither do we. To put things in perspective, Operation Iraqi Freedom, we had roughly 300,000. We went in there and we bombed the hell out of them before. Number one, Iran's a way bigger country. Military is way more competent. They have, hundreds of thousands of guys in their military. And then the worst part, the nightmarish part, is invading Iran is not going to work. Saddam Hussein tried in the 80s with U.S. backing and help, and he failed. And the reason why is because the terrain is unforgiving. We're talking about mountains, right? Like in mountains that are worse than Afghanistan. So when we have some case studies on this. When U.S. Special Forces were fighting in the mountains of Afghanistan against the Taliban or whatever, we suffered quite a bit of casualties. It was very difficult because they're hiding in the mountains, right? Yeah. We got some farmers that don't know anything fighting against, elite military, and they're like killing them and being able to actually resist. Osama bin Laden was able to fend off the Soviets, right? Even though we're backing him and stuff, but he was able because of the mountainous environment. Iran's that even worse, like same exact terrain, but even worse. So imagine the difficulties of Afghanistan with the mountainous terrain, and then you're actually fighting a real military that actually has real capabilities, right? It's a nightmare. We would suffer an enormous amount of casualties. Israel can barely get into Lebanon against Hezbollah. Like they can barely fight them. Like the only reason they even won on the last conflict is because of the pager attack alongside the bombings. Like the Israelis rely heavily upon their intelligence and their air power. But if we're talking about boots on the ground, between the IDF and the United States going into Iran, it's going to be a bloodbath. They're going to get cooked because of it's extremely difficult to run supply lines into a region like that that's so mountainous and so hard. You get tanks in, supplies, it's not going to work.
So what's the answer?
That's a good question, and I don't think the Trump administration planned that out. Right? Because what I'm thinking is this: Trump understands that this conflict is extremely unpopular for his base, right? Like a lot of us voted, like I voted for Trump and I said, okay, he said no new wars. I was like, let's go, because wars create a lot of issues, and a lot of issues that, like you said, you might feel down the line. I'll give you an example of why you're right. Like a lot of Americans in 2024, what was the big things that they were campaigning on? Inflation is high. Yeah. Groceries are too expensive, right? Bread, milk, eggs. A lot of Americans weren't able to kind of pinpoint it back. The reason why bread and food was expensive is because the Russia-Ukraine war. All right, what the hell are you talking about? Well, Ukraine's the breadbasket of Europe. If you hurt the supply chain there for food, like bread, for example, grain, well, that's going to put stress on another part of the supply chain, which ends up happening. Capitalism, people want to make money. They're going to increase the prices, right? It goes up, supply and demand. So though it took years for Americans to feel it, we eventually started feeling that in our pockets when it came to the cost of food. And the Russia-Ukraine war was a part of that. No one wants to, work it back that way. But conflicts inherently create instability. Instability inherently creates increases in the price of food and energy and everything else like that. So Trump, right, campaigned on no new wars. So in his head, he's like, okay, I'm on my high with Venezuela. We went in there. We got Maduro. It was a badass operation with no casualties, nothing. We can do this in Iran.
He became emboldened.
He came emboldened, and Iran is not Venezuela, my friend. It's a way bigger country, way more competent military. They have Russian and Chinese assistance, like for real. They have hypersonic missiles. They have real military capabilities, and then they have underground cities that we can't even get into a lot of the times with their missile systems, with their missile cities. So he thought, okay, if we kill the Ayatollah and his top 50 guys, they're going to rise up. They're going to be like, yes, there's an opening. We can do it. We're going to hit them even harder than when the Israelis did it with the 12-day war. And they're going to surrender and everything. Didn't work. So he's like, okay, well, this sucks. And then he didn't anticipate, and he admitted this when he spoke to, I think, the New York Post. Trump admitted this. He didn't think they were going to attack the Gulf countries so hard. So what Iran did, their strategy is this. And it's very important to understand, because I know I'm going to have some idiots comment, like, we're destroying them. We're bombing them into an oblivion. That is true. Let me be very clear about this. Americans' firepower is unstoppable. We are the best military in the world. No one can touch us in many different ways.
They're basically their Navy's gone.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah. But here's the thing. It was never their Navy that was the threat. It was their ballistic missile program.
Right.
Right. Now the Trump administration, notice how they're moving the goalposts. Like, we destroyed their Navy. Their Navy was never the issue. Right. It was the ballistic missile program, which is precisely why you went in. And the reason why their ballistic missile program was an issue is because the Israelis found out from the 12-day war that Israel can't touch them and they can really hurt them. Right. So the Israelis said, holy crap, we need to stop these guys. And the Israelis told the United States, and Marco Rubio slipped the other day admitting this, the Israelis were going to attack the Iranians no matter what. They were going to attack them no matter what, with or without U.S. assistance. So Marco Rubio said, well, if they're going to attack anyway, we need to be involved, because the Iranians said, if the Israelis attack us, or if the U.S. attacks us, we're going to attack both of you, and we're going to attack the Gulf states, because the Gulf states house a lot of the military bases that are used to attack us. So anyone that was involved in this chain of attacking us is up for it. We're going to create a regional war. So that is why the United States said, okay, if the Israelis are going to attack anyway, we might as well be involved and, have some type of control in this situation. I want to concede this, that the U.S. is absolutely decimating Iran from like a bombing / casualty level, air power superiority, fine. But that's not what the Iranians
I was going to say, we bombed and absolutely devastated in Vietnam also.
Yep, and Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And who's in power now? The Taliban.
And we had boots on the ground. And you win every single battle and you still lost the war. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't always work. And
with the Iranians, they've been planning this. They've watched the United States and Israel destroy all of their neighbors. They've seen, they saw Saddam Hussein lose. They saw Gaddafi, whatever. And they saw that the U.S. relies heavily upon air power. So what did they do? Move all their military infrastructure underground, where even bunker busters a lot of times have a difficult time destroying them. So they've been preparing for this, and they're going to have a war of attrition. They've mastered something called asymmetric warfare, and this is something actually that Qasem Soleimani mastered. This is why Trump killed him in 2020, because he was so dangerous to not just Israel but to the United States and manufacturing asymmetric warfare. And asymmetric warfare is basically the Iranians understand that we're superior to them militarily, and we can't stop that they can't stop us. So what they're doing is, okay, we're going to hurt them in pressure points. We're going to hurt them economically, politically, and make it where and financially, where they can no longer continue the war in this manner. And they're doing this already. What have they done? They've shut down the Strait of Hormuz. 20 to 30% of the world's oil goes through that little strait. Qatar shut down their natural gas production. That's 20% of the world's gas, right? That's created an enormous strain on Europe now. Right now, they have to rely on the Russians to get the gas. Well, they have a problem with Russia because Russia, Ukraine, they had them sanctioned. And Europe, Western Europe especially, their entire model of sanctioning Russia for their gas was based upon Qatari gas replacing it. Now they don't have that. The oil coming through, we're talking about $90 a barrel. As the time we're recording this, is about $90, $95 for a barrel of oil. It was like 50 to 60 like last week. Mm-hmm. So it's up significantly. So people are feeling that at the gas station. I've seen in multiple places now, like California, gas shot up $1 plus overnight.
Yeah, they're showing
for a gallon,
like $6-7.
Yeah, it's shot up.
It's not like that in Florida.
Yeah, not Florida, but it's going to catch up to us. And then also, so they shut down Strait of Hormuz. Gas and natural energy is taking a hit there, right?
But isn't the United States? Aren't we now escorting boats through Hormuz?
So Trump said that, but no ship is going to take that up, because they've already bombed a few of them and set them on fire, the Iranians, and no captain is going to sail through that because these aren't warships. These are like old freighters, right? That are very sensitive. So number one, no one's going to want to insure it. And then number two, no one's going to want to take that risk and lose the cargo, because then the captain's on the hook for that, right? And then as far as a naval escort, they don't want to be within range of these ballistic missiles from the Iranians, because you literally have to, because the Strait of Hormuz, at the narrowest point, it's about 20 miles. That's well within a ballistic missile range. So that's an enormous risk. That's why they had to move the armadas back. The destroyer armadas, they had to move them back to not be within striking distance of the ballistic missile. So I don't even know how he would be able to guarantee them across, safe passage across the strait. And then on top of that, they got mines on the seafloor, and the Strait of Hormuz is very shallow. So no ship is going to take that risk, a freighter ship. And right now there's about 200 of them just lined up, anchored down, and there has been none of the ships have been passing by. So energy stagnated. Then, we have the war of attrition with interceptors. The interceptor missiles that we use to shoot down their drones and their ballistic missiles are significantly more expensive than their drones. They're manufactured. And the other crazy part people need to understand is that Iranians manufacture everything in-house. They make all their own drones, all their own weapons. And they have many of these factories all across Iran, so they can keep doing it. And these interceptor missiles that we have, we already wasted 25% of them during the 12-day war. This is why Israel needed a ceasefire immediately to try to replenish. And I know Trump made a tweet or a Truth Social post saying that we met with the defense contractors, we're going to quadruple. Even if they quadrupled it, it wouldn't matter. They would never have the amount of interceptors necessary to be able to stop the amount of missiles that these guys have, especially when they make them domestically. And then the third part, over a week, the Iranians have destroyed our capacity to project influence and power in the Gulf, in the Middle East. They destroyed all the bases pretty much in Bahrain, Qatar, the UAE. They've pretty much bombed the hell out of the bases. People had to evacuate. They bombed the embassies. And the worst part, they bombed the radars. We have some very sophisticated radars that
I saw that
are
one,
first lines, of defense. So billion-dollar radars, right? THAAD systems, 30% of them have been destroyed. So, can we maintain spending $1 billion a day and losing our equipment and our foothold in the Gulf? Now, here's the other problem. We're paying for this diplomatically. The Gulf states are like, hold on one second. We had these military bases here. You guys are supposed to protect us, guaranteed protection. We're getting attacked for having these bases here, and you guys aren't even doing what you're supposed to do. What the hell? And they had just invested a bunch of money into the United States. Trump was there in spring negotiating deals. So this is hurting us diplomatically as well. We've already seen like Qatari billionaires, a big UAE billionaire who's like, responsible for a lot of the infrastructure and the construction. He's like, who are you to get us involved in this war? And the crazy part is like the Iranians warned the Gulf, they warned Israel, they warned the United States. If you attack us, we're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz and we are going to make this a regional war. And they're doing everything that they said they would. And the interceptors are slowing down. The Gulf states are panicking. They're pissed off. They've destroyed our bases all across the region. And the worst part is, here's the reality. We need to do the regime change the way that we want. We're going to need to get boots on the ground. To get boots on the ground, we're going to have to traverse the mountains. Those mountains are going to be fortified by their military. It's going to be a bloodbath. Very difficult to do that. We're going to have to get all the way to Tehran, right? Very difficult to do. So I don't think a regime change is going to be done because boots on the ground is just not going to work. So if we don't do a regime change, well, the regime is still in place that bombed the hell out of the Gulf. So the Gulf is going to be in a weird spot. Do we allow the United States to stay in this area and risk getting bombed again and losing all of our infrastructure and our tourism and our safety again after building up? Because the Gulf right now, they're trying to acquiesce to the West. They're trying to, bring tourism. They're trying to bring people there. They want to bring investors. They want to bring expatriates. So are we going to allow the United States to stay here and, lose a lot of the economic benefit that we've had? Or are we going to say, you know what, look, we had great business with you guys before, but we're going to limit your influence in the region with your military bases. We still work with you diplomatically, but we're not going to let you guys have military bases because it makes us a target. And then then they'll go to the Chinese or the Russians. The Chinese don't get into wars, and the Chinese have sophisticated military, and the Chinese get along with the Iranians. So would they just say, sorry guys, we'll work with you diplomatically, but you can't have military bases anymore? So like one of the biggest things that the United States has with the military is like our ability to project power all across the world. The Iranians have effectively hurt our presence in the Middle East. They bombed our bases, billions of dollars gone, and they've made us look really bad diplomatically to the Gulf states that hosted them there in the first place because we're not doing our job. We can't even protect them. A big Saudi Arabian analyst was complaining that we were putting more effort to protecting Israel than the Gulf states. And that's a big problem because this is unspoken, but in the Middle Eastern world, no one likes Israel, even the countries that are in the Abraham Accords. So they're doing all this business with the West, and they're seeing, we're the ones that they're investing in us and everything else like that, letting us have bases. Meanwhile, we're putting all our resources into protecting Israel. That doesn't rub them the right way. So they're like, why the fuck are we even taking all these risks, all these bombs, losing all this infrastructure? We don't need these guys. Like we'll go to the Chinese or the Russians for protection now. So there's many different issues here.
I'm sure the Russians can do much at this point.
True. But the Ukraine war is winding down. But I would say the Chinese. But okay. But they did make calls to Moscow with the energy, right? Right. And they did make So we're just in a very bad place politically, economically, militarily to effectuate the regime change. I don't want more soldiers dying. We've already lost 6. And was this war necessary? I don't think so. This war serves zero strategic benefit for the United States. I've debated many Zionists on this. I ask them all the time, give me one benefit the United States gets from this. They can't name anything. It's all strategic benefit for Israel. It's really not for us. So, I just see so many different issues between the Strait of Hormuz being closed down and energy prices shooting up. The loss of diplomacy with the Gulf states, us probably not being able to return to the region, losing billions upon billions of dollars in military infrastructure. For what, dude? Like, it's completely unnecessary.
So what's the end game? Where does it end up? Depending on what Trump does. Because if you're saying, that like if they don't put boots on the ground, then it becomes some kind of a stalemate, and they sign some kind of a peace agreement, which Iran won't live up to. You know,
well, they already rebuild. So I think on like day 3 of the war, whatever. Trump had tried to get Italians. He had tried to kind of go through back channels have the Italians like kind of try to mediate something, and the Iranians said, no, we're not negotiating at all. We don't want to talk to the United States. No negotiation, no nothing, because in their eyes, they're looking at this, and this is another important thing too that the American public needs to understand. For us, this was an optional war. For them, this is an existential war.
Right.
This is do or die for them. For us, it's like like let's beat them up a little bit, short air power, or whatever. For them, it's like no, this is it, right? So the stakes are way higher for them. This comes back literally to like the Russia-Ukraine conflict, right? The Russians want Ukraine way more than we want to be involved, right? The Iranians want to exist way more than we want to bomb them. So they're not going to give up. And Trump put out this stupid thing of like, unconditional surrender, blah, blah, blah. These guys have survived decades of sanctions, all being bombed already. They're hardened. They're not going to surrender. They got underground cities. This is what they've been preparing for decades. Ever since Saddam Hussein got put out of power, they learned we need to have underground cities, and we need to be able to maintain a long-term war and just bleed out the United States financially and politically. And then they know that Trump has a midterm this year. They know that this war is very unpopular.
I'm sure they're very in tune with the
so they know climate. The longer that they can make it happen, and the more that they can like keep the Strait of Hormuz closed, and then Qatar's LNG shut down, the better it is for them. So it's just, I don't see a political off. To answer your question, do I see a political off-ramp here? Yeah, but Trump would have to, he has too much of an ego. He would have to like pull out and be like, all right, we mission complete. We killed Ayatollah, blah, blah, blah. But dude, we all know that it was about a regime change. So I just don't see any political off-ramp here where Trump would be able to save face for his ego. So like, he's going to have to, and this is why like they ask him at the White House, him and Hegseth, are boots on the ground is still in the question? It's not off the table. That's scary for anyone that's in the service. That's scary. They're basically telling you that you're going to have to
even if it is off the table, they have to say that as a part of negotiations. They have to make it seem like it's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. But the fact that they would even entertain that after Iraq, like seriously, like, you know what I mean? Like this is a way more competent military with worse terrain. It's not flat like Iraq was in many places.
No, I think that they'd be better off putting more emphasis into Venezuela than doing what they're doing now. Like why not just go, if you're going to go in anywhere, go into Venezuela. It's a much more controllable environment. It's much closer, costs almost nothing.
But it's not about the oil. It's about making Israel the hegemony. And that's the problem. Like, and this is what when I say like because I've been like I'm very critical of Israel. And this is a perfect example of what I mean when I say that Israel drags us into wars, because Israel is going to attack them no matter what, because Israel's chief problem is the ballistic missiles. Now, those ballistic missiles can't touch us. So Trump and, his administration had to come up with some type of excuse that they can use to justify an invasion, and they use the nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's the weapons of mass destruction and going into Iraq.
And this is the crazy part about that. Like anyone that like pays attention is like, okay, Trump said back in June, Operation Midnight Hammer was a success, and we pushed them back years. So which one is it? I thought you destroyed their nuclear program. Now we're going back in for their nuclear program. What's going on here? So did you lie then, or are you lying now? Right. But they needed to manufacture some type of story to justify this invasion. And they're using a nuclear weapon angle. But the real reason we're going in?
It's not really an invasion yet, but yeah, you can say invasion.
This attack. But the real reason we're going is because of ballistic missiles. That's the real reason. And the Israelis definitely, that's the number one reason the Israelis are going.
We can't find them, and we can't pinpoint them, because you're saying they're hidden all over the place.
Okay. The country's literally I think 4 times the size of Iraq. It's like 3 Californias, all of Western Europe. It's huge, and there's hundreds of these missile cities. There's hundreds of these launchers all over the place. Like the country's massive, so and it's all over the place. So it's like it's going to be extremely difficult. And then people are saying now, well, we've lowered their ability down to 90% of the missiles are done. Yeah, they're obviously saving.
I don't really know that though. And how do you really know that? Like you don't really know where they all are. How are you really?
That's what they're telling the American public to make them feel better. But but also they're lowering it down because they know that this is going to be a long-term war. And even if you did destroy the launchers, they have missiles that can come out the sand. Dude, like they don't even need launchers for them. So it's like, and these are all over the country. So yeah, I don't know. This is a very bad war. I don't like it. I don't want more American bloodshed. We all saw Iraq. I thought we'd learn from that, but we clearly didn't. We clearly didn't, because Iraq was the same exact thing. The number one guy that was, in Washington, D.C. was Benjamin Netanyahu. I'll never forget, famously, 2002, if we take out Saddam, it'll have positive reverberations all across the region. What has it done? It's created more instability. Iraq is still, a shithole, still unstable. The Middle East, like, regime change wars just don't work. Like, it just doesn't work. And Iran is like one of the worst countries to try it with. We're talking about people that are, super religious. They're Shiites. They love martyrdom. It's a huge country. They have a capable military, capable ballistic missile program. Fundamentalists. Right. Like, this isn't these aren't secular people you're dealing with. You're dealing with people here that will die for their religion. And they look at it as like a blessing. Like, I'll never forget when during the 6-Day War, there was this woman. She was on the news broadcasting, right? And they bombed the location while she was broadcasting. She gets up and she walks away. Then she comes back and she's like, the Zionist regime will never stop us. We will continue to go. And then she goes on another news station and does another broadcast after getting bombed. These people are crazy, right? Do we really want to send our sons and daughters over to deal with these people? The thing that kills me is like, there's no strategic benefit to this. Why are we doing this? It doesn't benefit us to fight these crazy people. It's not our business.
Why does, and dumb it down to me, me, or for anyone listening, why does America care so much? Because
he's saying to protect Israel.
And why?
That's sort of boils down to just protecting
what's
Israel.
What's the big deal about Israel?
So
I don't pay attention to any
you're
politics.
Cool. You're cool. I'll give you the politically correct version. The Zionist lobby has a lot of control in America, a lot of power, and a lot of influence, especially within our political structure. If you look at some of the big donors to Donald Trump on his last campaign, one of them was a woman named Miriam Adelson, wife of Sheldon Adelson, who passed away. Gambling tycoon, right? Casino tycoon. Billions upon billions of dollars, biggest donors in the Republican Party. She gave him like $100 million. And look, when people give you that kind of money, typically that money comes with with strings attached. And for her, she's very pro-Israel. She obviously, every pro-Israel Zionist a lot of times understand that Iran is like the big enemy for them. It's the country that's the biggest national security threat for them. So she's going to go ahead and donate money for her political interests, and as many others. And they have an enormous amount of influence and power in D.C. And that is a big reason why we're seeing, the conflict going on in the Middle East. Because if you were to try to figure out what strategic benefit does it have for the United States, there's virtually none. But there's a lot of strategic benefits